Joe, I think we are live. Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Hi, I'm Christina Pan. Welcome to my LinkedIn Live podcast. I'm an executive coach, and I specialize in helping AI CEOs, founders, and senior executives get strategic clarity and conviction in your journey pioneering where there are no precedents by strategically leveraging your zone of genius. We will open it up to Q&A at the end, so feel free to post your questions in the comments. And now I am so excited to have Joe Zeff here today. Woo! Joe. So Joe is an accomplished technology executive with over 20 years of experience in the software and technology industries. As SVP of Customer Operations at Centerbase, he leads the teams responsible for onboarding, supporting, growing, and retaining customers. In addition to holding leadership positions at growth-oriented software firms, he has also served as a consultant to technology companies, advising on a range of strategic and operational challenges. He also co-founded a mobile commerce startup and began his career as an analyst at the U.S. State Department. He holds a BA from Michigan, an MA from George Washington, and an MBA from MIT Sloan. He is a long-standing board member and Chair Emeritus of JVS-Boston, a leading workforce development nonprofit, and he coaches youth sports. In fact, Joe has coached all three of his kids, his two sons and daughter, in basketball. What an amazing dad. And Joe lives in Arlington, Massachusetts with his wife, 3 kids, and new Cavalier puppy. And Joe and I actually go back over 20 years ago from MIT Sloan. And it is such a joy and delight to partner together in executive coaching in this current chapter of our lives. And one thing I actually learned at Sloan is that apparently Joe has a killer recipe for Joe Zeff's priceless crab cakes. So if you know him or connect with him after this podcast, you can ask him about his priceless crab cakes. And I'm not joking, that was in our MIT Sloan class cookbook. Anyway, I'm excited for this conversation because he has deep leadership wisdom that you don't always get to see in a LinkedIn profile or job title. Joe's zone of genius is generating momentum without chaos. So he is the perfect person to ask about what do great leaders do when the playbook keeps changing, right? Which many folks are navigating right now in this AI shift. So today we hope to spark your mind on non-obvious insights on timeless leadership principles that are high leverage when there is no playbook or the playbook keeps changing, how to create urgency without panic, and how to help teams become even more capable when there's pressure to move faster. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Christina. Thank you for inviting me. Nice intro. Appreciate that. And I especially appreciate you figuring out a way to work in a crab cake recipe from like 20 something years ago. Well done.
I was personally very impressed. So, and what a name, priceless. Joe Zeff's priceless crab cakes. Okay, so let's jump in. The first question I have for you is, one of your core leadership beliefs is every team is capable of achieving the extraordinary. Where did that belief come from? And what has it taught you about leading people through hard or uncertain times?
So I think I gleaned that from, multiple people and places along the way. I think looking back, probably the earliest, maybe the first seeds of that planted, I think really in the military as early as basic training. I mean, when you're going through, it was not uncommon to hear, especially if somebody was, I don't know, complaining or, falling behind the group or something like that. It was not uncommon to hear, you have no idea what you're capable of. You are capable of far more than you think. And I think it wasn't always said necessarily in the most, motivational way. It definitely had a motivating, impact, but it wasn't always said motivationally. It was almost said like a matter of fact, like you just don't know. You don't know where your ceiling is, and you won't until you try to get there. So I think that kind of instilled relatively early on, just that sense that, that maybe the sky isn't the limit, a platitude like that, but there's a lot of potential to achieve greatness. I would also say, even in us working together, you were constantly hammering the point of no limiting beliefs, right? So whether we were talking about me personally or, future opportunities, that was a fairly consistent mantra of, if I started going down a negative path, or that may not be possible because, or I don't really know if that kind of thing is for me, you wouldn't have it. You would just say, hey, no limiting beliefs, right? Let's talk through it. Let's, kind of think about opportunities and potential.
Oh my God, you cracked me up. I was thinking that right when you were saying that. And maybe that's why we're so aligned, because we each have our own version of no limiting beliefs. That's like a core mantra of ours. But yes, when I found this out about you and working together, I was like, wow, this is so exciting. And it's something that, I didn't even see on the outside. We were classmates at MIT Sloan. So I'm excited for all the gems that you're going to share in our podcast today.
I hope.
And yes,
I'll do my best.
Sorry.
I'll do my best.
Oh, trust me, Joe Zeff's got a lot of good gems. Okay, so then let's dive into more about, leadership, timeless leadership, as it applies, especially now. So a lot of leaders are under pressure to move faster right now, especially in the current environment where AI is driving incredibly fast changes. Even for people who've been in technology, it's like even faster than past technology waves. So the question for you is, what does this require internally from a leader before they can create good momentum that, the kind that actually produces impactful outcomes from the team, rather than, momentum that's chaos?
Well, I think there's a few pieces. First off, it's always helpful, and I would argue essential, to have clear priorities, right? If you're trying to move fast to do what? What is most important that we move fast to do or to accomplish? So I think clarity and prioritization is important. I think it's important to apply a certain amount of empathy. And really what I mean by that is, if you're going to get a team, a department, a company to move maybe in a different direction, or at least at a different speed, you need to understand what they're going through, what's actually on their plate, what might their concerns be, what might get in the way, even if they are motivated and aligned behind your vision, what might actually prevent them from moving as fast as you want. So I think having that understanding of what other people are experiencing and will be experiencing through the changes that you're trying to push is important. And then at some point you just have to start, right? Like, planning is good, it's important. Right? I have a mentor who always likes to say, measure twice, cut once, which is important. But at some point, you have to move. You have to leave the starting block. You actually just have to get going. So some prioritization, some understanding of what others will be experiencing on this journey that you're leading, and then go. Just start going.
Yes, bias to action. And so on the last point about the empathy, we haven't got into your zone of genius yet, but part of your zone of genius is in relator, like relationship building. Where did this viewpoint come from? It's your natural talent, but where would you say this viewpoint comes from, of really understanding what people are going through, like you said?
That's a good question. I'm not sure, other than it's sort of always present in mind for me, just to sort of look through the other person's eyes, see others' perspective, whether that's an audience that you're talking to and trying to understand, what's going to land with them, what's going to resonate, what's on their mind. And so I guess I'm not totally sure, but I think, thinking and reflecting on the process that we went through around the zone of genius, I would say in general, it wasn't so much like this grand process of self-discovery where I uncovered all these deep truths that I never knew about myself, right? So for example, another another strength, another aspect is analytical. It's not like no one had ever told me in my life that I have this analytical bent before. I've been aware of that. People have commented on that to me, but going through the process helps, I think, with framing, helps giving names to terms or attributes or qualities or behaviors. I think that is helpful. And then really just sort of the synthesis of different aspects of who I am, my personality, my traits, my inclinations. The combination of there and how those apply, I think, has also been helpful. So, for example, there, I knew you were going to ask me about Zone of Genius stuff.
I didn't even ask you yet.
What's that?
I didn't even ask you yet. Yes.
Well, I mean, I knew this part of the conversation was coming. So, so I wanted to have something, good to say. I was actually bouncing ideas off with my wife and kind of asking her, like, so from your perspective, right, these are the attributes of my zone of genius for my coaching. How do you see this playing out? And interestingly, she mentioned de-escalating, helping situations de-escalate, whether it's just in our house, right, with kids, arguments, whatever it may be, outside with other people, other tension, things like that. In organizations, things like that. I think also just, I think one thing that I learned from it is it sort of helped me reflect on, I think, a tendency that I have with people, friends, colleagues, to be a sounding board, to provide advice, to help people that are maybe at points of high tension and stress, to sort of think through, peel apart issues, understand what they're going through, and help them with a path forward. Not like I have all the answers, but I think with asking a lot of the right questions and trying to put myself in their shoes, I think that has been helpful for me to be that kind of sounding board for other people.
Joe, you could be a coach. Or you clearly integrated into your day-to-day anyway and your zone of genius. But I love that your wife called that out, the de-escalating, because we're going to talk about things related to that in a bit. I also wanted to ask you about what you said about priorities, like the first thing you said, because you had told me before about like everything can't be priority number one. And I have seen a lot of executives, say everything's a priority, or, all of these three things are P0 or the top priority. Mm-hmm. How do you personally grapple with that?
I grapple with it. Definitely do. It's way easier to say, prioritize and prioritize ruthlessly. That's very easy to say. It's very, very hard to do in the moment, especially when, maybe multiple fires are going off, or there really are a lot of different areas that all need attention. Like they all deserve attention. They all deserve effort, prioritization, all of that. And yet still can't do everything all the time at once. So I don't know that there's like a perfect recipe, do A, B, and C, and then you will have the perfect priority mix, but definitely have to be mindful of it, of the need to prioritize. I think also just having a vision of where you want to get to will help with the prioritization as well. If you're thinking not, 5-10 years down the road, but even, a quarter, a couple of quarters, maybe a year down the road, where do you want to be? And you sort of work backward. I think that helps with prioritization too.
Yes. Maybe it sounds simple to say once you say it, but I think a lot of teams don't follow that, or it's easy to forget when you're in all these fire drills. And I see that myself, even, from executive coaching, from a personal standpoint of like one's North Star vision and working backwards from that. Many folks don't have a clear one. especially, now when we're 20 plus years out from school. So, I love your, your honest, your honest thoughts on that. One thing I love about Joe is that he is no bullshit. And I love working with people like that personally. And so, okay, circling back to your zone of genius, when we worked together, as you had mentioned, that was a big part of our work, clarifying your zone of genius. What And you talked about like it was most useful for framing and synthesis, the combination of your top 5 strengths. Um, what were the biggest learnings for you from that?
I think, well, one was maybe about myself and then probably has some broader application. So as it turns out, one of the 5 strengths for myself was self-assurance. I do not feel 100% confident 100% of the time. I definitely do not. I, for sure, like probably most, if not all other people, have moments of doubt, moments where I don't feel super confident. But yeah, this was a strength. And I think the real learning there is, in general, I believe people perform far better when they have self-assurance, when they have self-confidence, when they have a belief that things can turn out well. So to me, the question that begs is, how do you get that confidence? Right. I mean, you when you were introducing me, you mentioned coaching youth sports, right? That's a great example of that's why we have practice. That's where we drill. That's where we, develop individual skills, team skills. So you develop not just the repetition and the muscle memory, but you have confidence in what you're doing. And then the outcome becomes a lot better. So I think, like, to me, that was an important part of our time together. And I just see that playing out in different walks of life.
Oh, I love that. Yes, the muscle memory. But the muscle memory, like in terms of how you leverage your zone of genius and think about it. Like as opposed to like being able to shoot hoops and basketball. Same concept, but applied in a different way for sure.
Exactly.
Wow, I love that insight. I was like, wow, that could be like a great sales moment that I didn't ask for, but I appreciate it. And so we also explored how your zone of genius thrives when there is no clear playbook. What do you think leaders can learn from this, even if their zone of genius is different from yours?
So I question whether there's truly no playbook. I mean, in one sense, like the exact next steps to take, like what is my next task? What do I need to do in this exact moment may not be clear. So in that sense, literally, yes, there may not actually be a playbook. But I think for folks, certainly people who have some amount of experience, they actually do have a playbook. It just may not be fully conscious for them. But we all have strengths, right? We all have habits. We all have skills. We all have ways of approaching and handling certain situations or challenges. That is our playbook until we can develop a more in the moment for this exact, I don't know, organization or situation, a playbook. Sure, there's always more that could be, kind of developed, but I think those guiding principles that people have of what's important, how do I operate, what do I lean into, that is actually people's playbook. That is where we can turn and sort of rely on when some of the, maybe written out in black and white isn't there to guide you. But we do have these inner things from our experiences and ourselves to guide us.
Yes, I love that reframing. And actually, well, from our work together, we know that you actually have like a treasure trove of playbook. And so, but I love that you're framing it as, anyone with substantial amount of, senior executive experience is gonna have playbooks. And it's not like those can't apply even if in a different way, especially if we like go back to maybe the first principles, the underlying principles. Um, so okay, and actually, so related to this, you had shared a story from your first day at Centerbase before where you didn't have any context and then you were thrown into a difficult customer conversation. So basically, like you didn't have a playbook in that moment on the surface. You had many playbooks from your past. Can you tell us more about that situation?
Sure. So I'll sort of paint the picture of what was going on. So back in September, I started a new role. On my first day, I did my HR stuff in the morning. About middle of the afternoon, I was maybe 6 hours into the gig. Member of my team said, "I'm about to get on a call with a very unhappy customer. We're going to get an earful. I've heard it before. They've given it to me before. I think they just need to yell at somebody else. Do you mind just joining, coming into the conversation?" Sure, that's what I'm here for, right? I lead the CX team. So it's very much a part of the role. It was obvious I was not going to be the guy to solve a technical problem that the customer was unhappy about. Right, 6 hours into the organization, and what the answer wasn't going to come from me. What was needed at the moment, though, was a person, a face to put in front of the customer, someone who would listen, acknowledge the issue, and work on their behalf to get it resolved. So that I can do. I didn't know how to solve the problem. I still don't know how to solve the problem today, technically. But I did know how to understand what the problem was and then work with the team to get to a solution. And along the way, build confidence and trust with the customer that we're going to communicate, we'll keep you up to date, right? All the things to, just start building trust before the final delivery. So again, I think that comes back to what we were talking about just prior, which is I didn't have a playbook. I didn't have the manual to look up and this will be the solution to all of their problems. But I relied on guiding principles. I relied on experience. I relied on empathy to sort of follow through in the moment.
Oh, and so I know it was natural for you to build trust in that moment. Like, what do you think are the top things that others could learn from or do in these situations where, like, say you're thrown into a meeting, you didn't have a lot of context. Well, that's which is a lot of situations, even if one has been at a company for a while. In terms of getting to the root of what's most important, and any tips for building trust as well.
Well, I mean, I think authenticity is always important in general, but in particular, if you're trying to build trust, it's really hard to build trust if you're not being who you truly are. So just coming back to that example, not to over-index on that one example, but if I showed up pretending like I was going to take a bunch of notes and come up with the answer or get back to them with the answer, it wouldn't have flown, right? So I was very upfront. I am brand new here. I'm not going to solve this, but I do want to understand what's actually happening, and then we will work together, on your issue. So again, I think like that sort of approach can be helpful, but I think the authenticity is key, and that plays out in a whole bunch of different ways depending on the scenario.
Oh, and what was the best part of the outcome from that approach?
Well, I think maybe one benefit, I don't know if this is the best outcome, but one was I showed my colleagues that I'm willing to face the fire, to run toward the fire, not away from the fire. And hopefully modeled something good during the course of that conversation. Just in the response and even in the listening and the follow through.
Yes. And the empathy, and what I love most is that you were modeling like leadership in uncertainty. And that, or maybe even more so, that you didn't have to have certainty, but you could still move the conversation forward in a positive way. That's huge, because that's
Sure.
what everyone's got to do, like right now in this AI shift, pretty much, and build trust, both in the team and in customers or whoever we're working with.
Absolutely.
And also, another thing that you had told me before related to this is you said hard moments can actually be a gift because you build trust faster and stronger in hard times. What do you mean by that?
So I do think that's true. I do think in difficult moments, the stakes are higher. So it can definitely be a more negative experience as well. I don't want to pretend that like, oh yeah, challenging moments, they're great. They're not great. People don't love them, but they can bring positives as well. So when somebody is having a difficult time, when the stakes are highest, you really can build trust that way. I think of an example for myself recently. This is completely not in the professional realm, um, but with a parent that was having a major surgery, the staff was amazing. The staff at the hospital was amazing. They set expectations beforehand, what would be happening, what they would be doing, what the timing would look like, right? There's going to be 15 different people coming in, poking, prodding, writing things down, all of that sort of stuff. So when things actually happened, they were not scary, right? They were sort of expected. And they did a really good job all throughout of this is where we're at. This is exactly where it should be. And right, it'll probably be another X number of hours before, before everything is done. But they continue just communicating. When the operation was over, doctor came out, explained everything that happened, that it was successful, and it was just like a huge relief, right? So very, very high, concern at that time, but just the empathy from the staff, the consistent communication, and then they actually did a good job with what they were doing, which of course matters too. So all of those components really led to, again, not a great experience, but under the circumstances, it was as good of an experience as it could have been.
That's amazing. And also that you have the natural like inclination to notice these things. So then what would you say are the top takeaways that apply to, really hard, difficult moments with our teams?
Well, again, I think having that vision, painting a picture of brighter days, right? Where are we going to get to? What can that look like? And why is that important? Why will that be good for whoever, for us, for customers, if it's your business. So I think that's important. I think driving more the MO or the culture, if you will, around taking ownership of these problems, of these challenges, right? We can get to a better place, and there's not going to be, the white knight swooping in to rescue us and save us. Like no one's going to come parachute in and fix all of these challenges for us. It's on us. We got to do it. We got to figure it out. We got to make our priorities. We got to make our plan of action, and we got to go. We got to start moving and doing it. So again, I don't think that's not a recipe for every situation, but to me, those are the ingredients that you need to be able to be effective in a scenario like that.
Yes, I definitely agree. And again, it's this common thread that we've had already throughout our conversation about high empathy and clear communication. And I like how you got more specific about what kind of communication, both on the vision and also just the motivating part. because, and this might sound obvious to you, for example, but I definitely see these gaps myself out there with leadership and many folks that it's this empathy and communication isn't happening. The empathy might be there, but it might be in like the leader's head, for example. So I love that you really emphasize the consistent communication. Okay, so we also know, or we discovered through our work together, that your zone of genius includes generating momentum without chaos, which is very relevant to this moment. How do you personally create urgency without panic?
Well, so first off, I think you need to, in your own mind, you need to understand like what is the nature of the challenge? What type of urgency are we talking about? Are we talking about a sprint where, okay, for the next few days, we need to clear our plates, clear our calendars, and really focus on whatever that thing is? Like, is it that type of a sprint where we're going to go all out for a short period of time? Or is this a long-term initiative where we really have like a marathon, right? Where we really have to sort of gear up for it, right? How are we going to do this? How are we going to continue to do this over time? How are we going to sustain the effort? What constitutes success? All of that sort of stuff. So I think like just go run like crazy in any direction is not the way to do it. I think you need to have a clear sense in mind of like, what does that effort look like, right? Are we sprinting? Are we running the marathon? One example definitely pops to mind for this sort of thing. I'll set the stage maybe by what was transpiring before the initiative itself to sort of build momentum. I'm going back several years now. I'd started a new role. This was maybe 8-9 years ago at this point. When I came into the organization, about 2 weeks after I started, we had our annual user conference. As part of our user conference, we always had a session on the first full day called the Executive Forum. And the Executive Forum is really C-level members of our customers that come in for kind of a separate part of the conference, some talks, and then one part of this Executive Forum is just like a literally open forum. One customer would just call on anybody in the audience. They would ask questions of the leadership team. At the time, there were a lot of challenges with the product. There were some unhappy customers. In any event, before this event, I had asked my boss, the CEO, what do you need me to do at this event, right? I'm new here, but what do you need me to do? And at the time, it was, you're only going to be a couple of weeks in, just sit, observe, see what's happening, so you kind of understand, the pulse of the customer base at this point. Well, in that open forum, things got a little warm, a little hot. There was definitely spicy. There was definitely some complaining going on. At one point, after several customers had sort of raised their hand and said, "Well, this is a problem and that's a problem," one of the prominent members of the customer base, the CEO of his organization, got the microphone and just very sort of plainly, matter-of-factly just said, "Guys, I'll boil it down for you. Y'all really just need to fix your fucking tickets." So he said in a room full of, I don't know, maybe a couple hundred people or so in this room. I think maybe half the room probably winced, myself included, just at how he sort of dropped that. And the other half of the room seemed to start nodding, like, yeah, what he said. So of course, at that point, I'm thinking like, great, I'm glad I don't have a part in this. Like, this is not a comfortable conversation. At that exact moment, my CEO, who told me to, expect to not do a whole lot and just kind of sit and take notes, was, "Good point. Well, we have this new guy, Joe, who's here to like fix all of these problems." Joe, why don't you say something to the group? So that's sort of how it started. But that was a very, very clear prioritization. That was spelled out in completely unmistakable terms. Now, to your question around how do you generate momentum and how do you get moving?
Without chaos.
Without chaos, right? Important qualifier. Attacking our backlog became priority number one. And that's what customers were kind of saying, but then when they all got together, they said it, extremely clearly, bluntly, and directly. That became priority number one for my group. Every week, we looked at our backlog. We had a target in mind. We were way up here. We had a target. How are we proceeding toward our target? Even in customer presentations, I wouldn't show exact numbers, but I would show kind of a heat map. This is where we're at. This is the progress we're making. We're not where we need to be and want to be yet, but we are actually making progress. It was a good year-long effort before we really got things under control. But every single week, we looked at where we were relative to our goal. We looked at the progress we were making. If we took a step back one week, we talked about why that was. Why were we not, picking up more steam? So it was really sort of painting a very, very clear picture for everybody to understand the importance. And then the repetition of this is important. And we're going to continue working on it. And we're going to keep working on it. We're going to run this marathon. And eventually we are going to get to that finish line. And we did. We did get to the level that we needed to. So overall, the entire effort was extremely rewarding. But it was very difficult along the way. And it wasn't just like put up a chart one day and say go and expect that, that kind of effort just sustains itself over time.
So what is the biggest takeaway from that for how you personally created urgency without panic?
Well, I think the principles were similar to what I mentioned before, which is clear priority, understand the challenge that it would take, right? So there was, I guess the part I didn't say was some of the planning around us. How are we going to do this? How are we going to move things off people's plates so that they could focus on what myself and others on a leadership team deemed to be priority number one? So there was that aspect of understanding the operation, understanding people's mindsets, understanding what has to happen to actually achieve that goal, besides me saying I would like to achieve this goal and want to see it happen. And then we just moved, right? We just started tracking, started knocking issues out one after another. So I think those were the pieces. Obviously, different scenarios are going to require different small, components, but I think those are the main pieces there.
Yes. And what I think is unusually not obvious amongst those pieces is the part you said about understanding people's mindsets, which again, it comes back to, I think you're the later zone of genius, but also you have arranger is one of your top Clifton strengths as well, in terms of what you said about moving things off people's plates. And basically, arrangers love optimizing. And in tech especially, it's easy to focus on optimizing in terms of like the product or process. But like, I think the part that you are really good at is the people part, the optimizing that in terms of like their mindsets, thinking about what motivates them. And a question related to this example, which, by the way, amazing. I was wondering, is this a sprint or a marathon? You ended up saying it was a marathon, but
it was a marathon. That was absolutely a marathon.
Do you know that up front, or how do you, in general, as a principal, distinguish whether it'll be a sprint or a marathon? Because I know there are executives out there who would say, we're doing a sprint, that is a marathon. What's your response to that?
There's aspirational thinking and then there's unrealistic thinking, and that sometimes the line isn't clear between the two of them, but that's where I think experience, judgment, and just being honest with yourself comes in, and understanding of the nature of the problem, right? Some some problems can't be solved in a day or a week. There's just too much to them. It doesn't mean you're impatient. It doesn't mean you don't care about driving to a resolution. It just means you have an understanding of what it's going to take to get there. So I'm speaking a little bit in kind of big platitudes, because I don't think there is just like, I don't think there's a formula. If A, B, and C, then it's a sprint. And if not, then it's a marathon. I think that's where the context, the experience, and the judgment have to come into play.
Oh, excellent answer. Yes, it does depend on the context. What would you do in a situation where there is pressure to sprint like a marathon?
To sprint like a marathon?
Yes, or yes.
What do you mean by that?
Basically, it's you're going as hard as a sprint, but it's a marathon. Or is that not how you would think about it?
I mean, so I'm not a marathon runner. I'm not a distance runner, but if you're going to run 26 miles, you still have to pace yourself. You could push yourself very hard, and you can break your personal record and, maybe break the course record or whatever, but you still have to have a pace. And the pace, by definition, is the balance between how fast can you go and how fast can you go for a long period of time. So I guess I'm not really answering your question, other than I don't think it's a limiting belief to say that sprinting for 26 miles is not realistic and expecting other people to do that is not realistic. The real magic there and the real key is finding what is the pace, what is the right pace to pick for this. That's where I think the real insight lies.
Yes, I think that is a crossroads of contention in many teams. But you did answer it in terms, I read your answer as, you're using your Ranger zone of genius in terms of like optimizing energy. Like that's another way that I interpret okay, what is the right pace that keeps everyone's motivation and energy optimal, right? Like, because there are definitely diminishing returns to going really hard at something, work-wise or in life in general.
I like how you said that. Now I feel it's a good answer, the way you framed that up.
Oh, I like you're reframing other people's framings and I'm reframing with you. Yes. Well, because I definitely can see this in, a lot of intense high growth companies and startups, and this AI wave also is gonna be inclined to that, or it's happening right now too.
Mm-hmm.
And so also one thing related to generating momentum without chaos that I really like that you've talked about before is like your top ethos or principle is like you told me before, like, this is urgent, this is super important, here's why, and we got this. Can you talk more about that, especially because the we got this part I don't find as commonly in leadership?
Yeah, the we got this part ties back to the very first thing that we were talking about here today, which was being people or teams being able or capable of achieving extraordinary things, right? So the we got this comes back to that notion of you don't know where your ceiling is. You are capable of more than you think. So painting the picture of that, again, that brighter day, what's the vision? Why will that be a good place to get to? Understanding what it's going to take to get there. And then we can do this. Got to instill the belief that we actually can achieve this. We can accomplish it. And sometimes it's just saying it a lot and reminding people. And sometimes it's celebrating wins along the way, even if they are not right. You haven't maybe gotten to the top of the hill, but you're part of the way up there. Celebrate the fact that we're making progress and we're getting there.
Well, and where does the we got this part of you come from? I guess it is from like that belief about every team is capable of the extraordinary. But I ask because, you could be the kind of leader, executive that isn't, we got this, but not really living it. Kind of like the basketball coach that pushes the team, but doesn't include like himself in the we, but you very much include yourself in the we. What?
Correct.
Yeah.
I think that's just a fundamental aspect of leadership at any level, right? It could be a youth sports team, it could be a large corporation, could be anything in between.
Why do you
Being
say
led
that?
by someone that is not truly in the group, even if they're not doing the same things, right? My CEO doesn't spend his days doing the exact same things that I do, but they could still be in it with you, right? They can have the understanding. You could see that they are putting in at least as much effort as you. They are leading by example, right? In the military context, it would be, right, follow me, I'm going to lead, I'll go first, that sort of thing, right? So whatever the walk of life or whatever the context, there is a way to demonstrate solidarity and sort of being part of the team and not simply above it, directing down from on high.
Oh, I love that. That I'll go first, even. Like, I'll go do the hard thing first.
Right. Right.
Very inspiring. I think, I hope more people listen to this. When I heard that from Joe, I was like, oh man, I want to work with Joe. Or I would work for Joe because that kind of spirit really excites me too. And so I think that's how you naturally motivate your teams and create momentum without the chaos. So, okay, another question on your zone of genius is that you're also excellent at creating high performing team culture. One of your core values is ownership. And I know you have a distinct view on ownership versus accountability. What is the difference and why does it matter?
So I do have an opinion on this. First off, I guess I would say there's obviously a lot of overlap between ownership and accountability, right? Just in terms of like responsibility for outcomes. And accountability isn't the kind of thing that you can just like, I am not for accountability. No one says they're like opposed to accountability, and I'm not either, right? That would be like, saying like motherhood, apple pie, those are terrible things, right? Accountability is not a terrible thing. However, in thinking from a cultural standpoint, if I think about, principles or values or whatever, I look at ownership as being above accountability. And the reason I say that is where those terms diverge, like where they don't overlap, accountability tends to go or is sometimes used as I will hold you accountable, which is basically, it's basically saying who's going to get in trouble if things go sideways. That's an aspect that accountability covers, which is why I don't feel it's as strong as ownership. To me, ownership and doesn't answer the question who's going to get in trouble when things go sideways. It answers the question of who will act to ensure that we're successful if things are not going well, like who will step in. So to me, ownership doesn't account for every scenario. What it accounts for is we're going to operate a certain way, and not if, but when we encounter an obstacle, when we run into something difficult, when something doesn't play out the way we had planned for it to play out, we're going to have within us to fill in that gap, to step up, to make the difference that's needed in the moment. That's why I prefer ownership to thinking about accountability. Accountability comes with, not always, but it is sometimes used as who is to blame, as opposed to how do we want to operate so that things that we haven't planned for, things that we didn't know were going to happen, we still have the ability to overcome.
Yes, and I love that your focus on ownership is really about making a good outcome happen no matter what. And so I really love the nuanced definition you have of ownership from your core values. And it speaks a lot to like team culture as well, which relates to my next question, because you said, ownership is about filling in the gaps. And before, you've said process can never cover 100% of reality. Like culture closes the gap. And I personally think people aren't talking about culture enough in this quest for AI productivity and AI mandates. So where does culture close the gap that AI cannot?
So it's an interesting question thinking about culture in this moment where AI is everywhere and on everybody's mind, and it seems in every conversation. I actually think there can be a virtuous cycle between culture within an organization and AI. And what I mean by that is if you have a culture that encourages experimentation, if you have a culture of continuous improvement where you're constantly trying to just make things better, in a culture where you can try that, and if something doesn't work out, it's actually okay, and you're not going to get your head chopped off for for something experimental that fails. That type of environment is awesome to push use of AI forward in an organization, because AI is tailor-made to try new things, try a new solution, try to automate something, try to tie together some pieces of knowledge, try to build something new, try to cut down the amount of time it takes to do something. If you have a culture that encourages that type of effort, the experimentation, the change, not sticking rigidly to everything that we've done and we're going to keep doing it that way because that's how we've done it, then that's great. And it's sort of self-reinforcing because you will make progress. You will see new solutions to challenges, new workflows, new processes, things like that. And you'll just sort of keep feeding that wheel. Like you'll want to continue doing that. If that, and it's a very different scenario if that's not the case. If there's not a tolerance for experimentation, if there's not encouragement of at least a little bit of risk taking and experimentation and continuous improvement, then it's going to be a lot harder to sort of move forward with a massive change, with a massive technology change to be adopted effectively and quickly.
Yes. So then what does can we speak to that? Like if it's not already set up as the ideal culture for experimentation, what do you think are like the key principles that could help leaders out there?
Build a proof point. If it's not sort of in the DNA, then start getting it into the DNA. Actually, I have a really interesting example of something that we done in my current employer, which is not to say that and I'm not introducing that because there's a lack of encouragement of experimentation. There's actually a lot of encouragement of experimentation. And so one thing that's been really interesting to see and is really happening in real time as we're talking is the CTO in my organization built an internal application entirely using AI tools. And what it does is it plugs into all of our different internal systems so that we have, and we've never had this internally, where everybody in the organization can see, I work for a software company, right? So we have could see every open issue, which customer it's tied to, what's the state of that customer relationship, a lot of our internal tooling, a lot of our internal knowledge, things like that. We never had this level of visibility and alignment before, and I haven't seen anything like this before, even though there's plenty of applications out there that try to do this sort of thing. But in very, very short period of time, the entire organization has adopted this tool, which is really just sort of relying on data that exists within the organization. And we have some major initiatives going right now that are really, really focusing on our highest priority issues. And I knew even just from the relatively short time that I've been here, about 8-9 months or so, when I started, there was a lot of, well, who's going to work on this? Who's going to work on that? What should we prioritize? I don't know what I should be doing. It seems like there's a lot of fires. What do I do? Now we have incredibly clear alignment across teams: product, engineering, QA, support, success. All the teams understand what's important. We all have the visibility in understanding exactly where things are in the development cycle. And we are also having the ability to see the actual impact it's having. So this is something that we didn't have a plan around. It was something that my CTO started building, and then he shared it out. I gave some more ideas, quickly built those. Other teams are building additional components into this. And before you knew it, just in a matter of weeks, this application is now guiding a lot of the work that we're doing internally across many departments within the company.
Wow, that's amazing.
Really cool. That is exactly the kind of application and use case that is, it's really rewarding to see. And it's incredibly effective at driving that alignment, right? That prioritization, all those words that I've been using this whole time. This is actually something that brings it to the forefront and brings it to life.
Okay. Can I bring it? So one, you've told me before that culture is anything that there isn't a step-by-step SOP for, right? Statement of a process. Yeah. Well, going back to your point about building a proof point and start getting it into the DNA, because it's so important, culture does fill in the gaps for things that, there isn't a process for. What were the top things you did to get that alignment and start getting it in the DNA?
Again, I think.
But that could be learnings for others to leverage too. That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I think looking, even just using this one application that I was talking about as an example, first off, there's a visibility aspect, right? It's hard to know what other people are working on, much less other departments, right? I sit in development, I sit in success. Well, I don't know what they do in finance. I know they have spreadsheets open and things like that, but I don't actually know what they do. But having that greater visibility actually does help, right? It provides maybe a little bit of empathy, but certainly a lot of understanding of what's happening. And it gave us the opportunity to come together as an organization across department lines and tee up conversations, right? So it's not just about let's put a bunch of data together, throw it on a screen and have people kind of react to it, but it's really being able to revisit it, torture the data a little bit, right? Play with it, understand trends that are underlying, ask further questions, and make decisions. So I think, coming back to your question of how do you build it into the DNA and where do you get a proof point? If my organization was one where experimentation was not encouraged, that initial proof point was there. Meaning there was some initiative, CTO took initiative, put together this application. The value was very, very quickly evident. And then this thing has taken on almost a life of its own in terms of how we've grown it and built it out more. But that initial proof point was, hey, there's value here today. And you've planted a seed for me to think wow, if I add another component, if I add in another data source, this thing can be even better. So I think that initial proof point and then some rapid iteration, right? I mean, that's in the tech industry, that's what we always talk about, right? Get a proof point, iterate, move fast, that sort of thing. But it's very, very applicable in this scenario too. Even as you frame the question, even in a scenario where that may not be the MO of the organization or some of the people in the organization to do that, but stuff still works. Still works.
I mean, also evidence and proof points are great sales tools in building conviction in a team. So, okay, it sounds like the takeaways that would apply for everyone is to find the AI-pilled people, AI enthusiasts in your org, and maybe including yourself if you're listening to this podcast, to build that proof point, like get some kind of concrete evidence going that others can see, rapidly iterate, right? Using your smart judgment on what would get alignment in terms of visibility and alignment across department lines. And then I think you must have done something key though to build momentum across department lines and build up those conversations. Is that right?
Well, so this application that I was talking about in this example, we use it. I personally use it every day. We use it on cross-functional calls. We all look into the same screen. We all look at the same information. So it's not like, oh, I built this thing and then it told us what's important, and now we're just going to go back to the way we used to work now that we have a new direction. It's no, we're incorporating the new tool, the new resource, whatever you may design. We're incorporating that into the day-to-day. Like it's now part of the operation.
So, oh yeah, that's a key part for sure. Like you as the top leader of your team using it daily. Is that right?
Absolutely.
And then what was a key thing to get momentum? What was a key thing that got momentum across different departments?
Well, I am fortunate that I have colleagues leading other departments and leading the company that the chair, what I would say, is a desire to do the right thing, meaning it's not about their own personal goals. It's what is truly important for the organization as a whole and the customer base. That's a different battle if you aren't aligned with other folks in that way, or you don't have the same sort of mindset. I'm very fortunate that I don't have that problem. So it was relatively, I don't want to say easy. It was not a massive challenge to build momentum, because there was, I think, widespread either acknowledgement or acceptance or openness to seeing the nature of the challenges that we were trying to prioritize.
Oh, I love that. That was part of our work together is, working in organizations that are values aligned. And
absolutely.
Where your zone of genius could thrive, but the values aligned is key. So that's a great call out. Even if people are not at companies where they have that, it's something that one could definitely look for in your next role I was going to say, and or try to cultivate from within. But, values are a fundamental thing that can be hard to change. But, okay. And I do think many people have the openness right now, too, with trying to adapt quickly with AI. So I think I see that more as like openness, but chaos. So I think the key bridge that you had is like you were able to create momentum without the chaos. But I think many people are very open to it. That's such an awesome example that you shared, Joe. Any other key call outs that were notable about this experience?
Ask me again in a month. It's changing a lot every day.
Oh my God, in a month, you'll be like, we built some other tool that's even better. And we chucked the old one. Maybe. Okay, so then when the playbook keeps changing, how do you personally lead with conviction without pretending to have certainty?
So I'll come back to some points I made earlier. Number one, be authentic. Again, easy to say, maybe harder to do.
Yes.
And it does take a little bit of, I think, back to the zone of genius conversation, a little bit of self-assurance to be authentic about, and authentic plays out in a lot of different ways, right? Part of it is showing I am with the team, right? The whole "we got this" thing. I think it's being forthright. I think the example where there was no way I was going to be the guy with the answer to, to the technical issue. But you could say that. It's fine to acknowledge things that you know and things that you don't know. Things that you feel very strongly about, like I really believe this is the right thing and here's why, is also fine. It's right. Like being authentic means you can actually state strong opinions when you have them. And then, some of the other principles we talked about earlier too. Have your priorities, have your North Star vision, to use your term. Understand the path that you're going to go on, understand what you're going to be asking of people to go on whatever the journey is that you're going to try to lead them on, and move, get going, get out of the starting block, do something once you have that.
Oh my God. On that last point, understand what you're going to ask of people. I know it's easy for you and natural. What are some maybe top 2 tips or pointers on how a leader could understand what they're going to ask of people?
Well, I think sometimes we all have an inclination just to make assumptions in our mind and kind of move past them. But I think it's helpful to pause and ask yourself, how might this go wrong? And how might this go wrong almost certainly would be, if we're talking about change management or, asking difficult things, resistance, lack of motivation, distraction, things like that, right? So how might this go wrong? Well, if I'm telling everybody you got to get on the bus, but they're not really on the bus with me, or they don't really understand, or I haven't made it clear what the expectations are, that sort of thing. So just a moment of pause, a moment of reflection. What could make this go wrong? What could lead someone to not want to do what I'm asking them to do? That in and of itself is an important step, because I think that'll probably shed light. And if you don't know the answers to that, ask. What are you concerned about? Here's the plan. Here's where I want us to go. It looks like you're not super enthusiastic. Why is that? Do you not believe this is the right plan? Are you not excited about this plan? Are you worried about what this plan is going to do to your day-to-day and change things that you know how to do, and now you're going to be doing things you don't know how to do as much? And that's like, whatever it is, ask the questions, right? Think about it, pause to try to see what insights you may be able to come up with, and you may already know. And where you don't know, get feedback. Trust the people you're working with to be adults and ask them.
Oh my God. Joe, that was just like a lot of Yoda wisdom right there. I'm serious. Because it's definitely a standout leadership trait, and it's pretty rare. And I love that was very, concrete, tactical advice too, because not everyone has relationship building in their top strengths. So it might be hard for them. They could definitely pause, but it'd be hard for some people to understand how might this go wrong, or, to notice if people are on the bus with them or not. But everyone can ask, for sure. Everybody can
ask.
Yes, everyone can ask. How do you know if someone's not really on the bus with you?
Well, a lot of times they'll tell me.
Oh, they will? Okay.
I mean, not always.
That's your openness as a leader.
Not always, but yeah, I mean, that's like I try to, establish connections where we can be direct. Right? If somebody's doing something great, tell them they're doing something great. If somebody doesn't like what you're doing, they have to feel like they can say that to you without severe consequence. You may disagree, but that's not a consequence, right? You're not going to take action against somebody. So, right, or yell at them or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I think that is important. If the ability to receive feedback. And I don't even mean in like a formal setting, like a performance review kind of setting, right?
Yeah.
But just like receive feedback from customers, from the market, from others internally. It's important. It's the key aspect of leading uh, any team, any effort. You got to know how you're actually doing and how you're tracking.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, most of the important signal is from the informal conversations. It's, all the conversations outside of performance reviews. That's where all the leverage and juice is. So brilliant. Okay. Congratulations. I mean, you clearly, create a psychologically safe culture and environment on your team. And I mean, we already knew this because Relator is in your zone of genius, which is really about cultivating one-on-one close relationships really well. And so, moving on to the last question, like circling back to your core leadership belief. If every team is capable of achieving the extraordinary, what gives you the most hope about what people and teams are capable of as the playbook keeps changing in this AI shift?
So I think maybe a couple things generally, and then I'll give you an example. First off, on this whole theme of achieving the extraordinary, I think the definition of extraordinary is changing. In the same way that, what has been possible has changed with other significant advances in technology, not just information technology, by the way. But really, I think probably, I'm not a historian, but probably from like the dawn of civilization, right?
Yes.
What things that like the ceiling keeps getting raised, right? What is possible keeps becoming, more and more keeps becoming possible, in particular now. So, what gives me hope? I mean, there are things that give me concern too, for sure. But in terms of what gives me hope, this has been the story of humanity and civilization, right? Development of new abilities, and then that gets adopted, and people make advances in, in how we live. So I think maybe more tangible, real example. You mentioned up front that I've been associated with JVS-Boston for a number of years. Amazing organization. We are actually about to kick off a new initiative specifically focusing on AI. So real quick, what JVS does is they provide workforce development. So they have a lot of skills training, help people find jobs. They also partner with employers in the greater Boston area that need skilled labor, that are struggling to find skilled labor, and they kind of bring them all together. So it's an amazing organization. They help employers, they help job seekers, and they do really
examples of what kinds of jobs, just to give a more concrete idea of
many, many different types of jobs. They do a lot of work in healthcare, a lot of different type of healthcare jobs. They do a lot of work with life sciences, biotech, pharma. So they do a lot of work in those areas. In particular, there's a lot of that, industry, of course, in Boston, and that's where a lot of the growth in jobs is, and so that's where JVS plays quite a bit. But JVS is now really embracing AI on a couple of fronts. One, internally, right, just as a service agency, being more effective, being able to get more out of the right. We all live in a world of finite budgets, and this, that is especially true for nonprofit organizations. So just being able to enhance the capabilities of the organization internally to deliver for more and more clients. But on top of that adoption internally, JVS provides training and helps people develop skills, whether that's for English language learners or technical skills for jobs. And more, you need to have some AI chops because AI is being used in just about every workplace. And so if you're trying to move up in your career, if you're trying to For example, I don't know, go from food service to more of kind of an office environment, you need some of these technical skills. And so JVS is building the ability to help job seekers develop those skills as well. So things like that give me a lot of hope because, right, here's a new technology. It's not just about some of the headlines that you see about layoffs or lack of hiring or things like that, which are 100% valid concerns. And at the same time, this is an avenue where AI is being used to take the good work that an organization is doing farther and to help equip people that maybe don't get those skills through their day-to-day, through their education or their professional environments, to develop those skills and become or stay competitive in the workforce.
So, actually, if you could you give more context on what kinds of people JVS helps or who use
JVS helps people from all different walks. They do a lot of work with refugees and new immigrants. They do a lot of work with people with disabilities. They do a lot of work for people really just looking to achieve financial independence and self-sufficiency as well. So again, they work with people from, I don't even know the number of different countries, number of clients that come to JVS, but different countries, different walks of life. Obviously, they do a lot of work with native Boston labor as well. So they work with a very, very wide range of people. And so being able to layer into the many services and programs that they provide today, this additional aspect that could not be more timely of AI skilling, that's pretty cool. I think that's pretty amazing
because these are folks who don't have probably, I assume, a lot of the advantage, or maybe I'll ask you, a lot of the advantages that maybe the listeners of this podcast have in terms of like professional or economic resources. Is that right?
I think on balance, I think that's probably true. JVS does work with mid-career professionals as well. They work with a lot of people with. I think one thing that does stand out about the JVS clientele is these are people that are motivated. They're coming. They're looking to be behind the wheel of their own story, right? They're really looking to take action to help drive professional development, financial self-sufficiency, things like that. Those types of people, when you have that mindset of I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to work so that I can get to a better place in my life, those kind of people are exactly who should be equipped with the skills to master the new technologies that are out there.
Yes, I was like, they should just start their own AI startup, build their own business using AI, which maybe they will through the help of JVS. So I could see why you have a ton of hope about that. That's exciting, and that's not things like positive things that we necessarily see in the news or media. And kudos to you for being a leader at JVS, for helping all these people who are in it to win it. I love that thread of like they're hungry for it. So that's exciting. Okay, so now I want to wrap up with two fun questions at the end. So the first fun question is, what is a cool use of AI you've discovered recently? Something that could be highly valuable to the folks listening on this podcast, perhaps?
So I would call out either of a couple examples that I've given already on our conversation here. So the JVS one is a great one, but one that's maybe a little bit more applicable. The application I was talking about earlier that my CTO developed internally, I don't think there's magic in what he built because it's highly contextually relevant for my organization. That exact application in another company wouldn't necessarily be quite as relevant or in the same way or have the same kind of impact, but there's something that would. There is definitely something that would. It just has to fit the context and the environment and the situation that you're in. So something like that. I know the amount of effort was not huge, but the amount of impact really has been. So I would encourage anybody that's sort of thinking about, gee, how do I transplant something like that into my organization? Where is there a lack of alignment? What do people get frustrated about the most? What do people complain about the most? Or what do customers complain about the most? There's enough smoke there that I think there would be fire somewhere, right? Like that's a good place to start looking. And the ability to develop small little solutions today, it's so fast. You can do a lot quickly. Try, experiment, see. You may build something and it totally falls flat. That's fine. You can build something quick tomorrow.
Yes. Wow, I love that. I love that you brought that back up again in terms of how other people could leverage it, because it definitely sounded like something that, I mean, it might have been a small solution relative to like what it would have taken to build that before, but incredibly, incredibly high leverage and high impact. Yeah. So with the theme of aligning visibility in one's organization.
Yeah.
So yes, kudos to you guys for pioneering there. I'm like, wow, if I worked in a company, I'd want to go try to find colleagues to hack away on something like this together. And so second question, what is something cool outside of AI, non-AI related, that you're excited about and also could be highly useful for others?
So I don't know if this is something I'm highly excited about, but I do think it is useful.
Okay. Great.
So recently, about a week and a half ago, this is a home improvement story. It's not exciting, but it's relevant. Had plumbing issues. Long story short, I had to swap out our faucet, one of the bathroom faucets in my house. Great. I hadn't actually done it before. I'm like maybe mildly handy, like I can learn things, but I don't know that much. So I hadn't done it before. This was so annoying. It was so irritating. Like the bolt that is screwed in that holds the sink in place, I needed a wrench to get it out, right? To undo it so that I could remove faucet. Well, as it happens, in the weird little quirks of how this bathroom was built, the space between the sink and the wall where I needed to undo this, the wrench that I had basically didn't fit. Like it really didn't fit. So what should have taken not that long, and I'm kind of embarrassed at how long it took me to ultimately do this, but I spent way longer than I should have, sweating, cursing in my head, this stupid nut, trying to get this thing out. Eventually though, I did actually get it out. I did swap it out. Sink works again. There's water flowing. It's great. So I felt, this little sense of accomplishment of doing something that I hadn't done before. I don't know if I would consider it a skill. I'm definitely not, like, nobody call me if you have plumbing issues. I'm not the guy. But it was something like in the physical real world, I guess, is really the answer. So like to your question, right, we're talking a lot about AI and technology and the way it changes the workplace and many aspects of our lives. Along the way, do something that's not AI, that's not just coding, that's not on a screen, that's not leveraging the latest and greatest, just some real world, physical, tangible, hands-on thing. Could be more creative or art oriented. It could be more crafty. It could be something, but do something that's not developing with AI, just to have that other balance in your life, that other little different flavor and feeling of satisfaction when you accomplish something or you learn something new. So I think there's something to be said for continuing to do things that are unplugged, even as more and more gets plugged in.
Oh, I love that. You know why this is so great? Because I have seen online people comment jokingly about like how many more hours they're spending because they've discovered, they can build all
Hmm.
these things with Claude Code or AI. And so I think, yeah, the upside of all this ability to build cool apps is people can also over index in not managing their energy well. So, as an energy management fan, I love this because, yes, doing something physical, not on the computer, is definitely great for boosting your mental and emotional energy. And I would say even on a daily basis, for sure, like a regular basis,
Yeah.
because that makes us sharper when we are doing the stuff on the computer. Wow. Okay. So plumbing. Yes. I mean, I always thought you were handy, but also the one thing I loved in that story is the challenge. Even related to like what you said before about we grow the most when we do hard challenges, hard things. So even though it was like probably a pain in your ass, that there was like that surge of accomplishment, like you said. And so, okay. So Joe, for people who want to connect with you, what is the best next step?
Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. I think Christina has posted or will be posting my profile link. Reach out to me, just say hi, connect, let's talk.
Okay, awesome. And is there anything that people that would be helpful for you with JVS, or if people are interested in that?
So
Yes.
same point, connect with me. If you want to do research on JVS, you can look up the organization. There's actually a JVS organization in a number of different cities in the US. I'm affiliated with the one here in Boston, JVS-Boston, JVS-Boston.org.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
check them out if you're interested. Ping me. I would love to connect people with the organization. There's a lot of different ways to get involved.
Yes, it would be nice. A great outlet for people who want to leverage their AI expertise to help others and bring up others. And so for those who want to connect with me, as Joe talked about, having clarity within yourself as a leader to generate momentum without chaos. Every person has a different zone of genius, but on the clarity part, for CEOs, founders, or senior executives, second guessing yourself, or if you're wanting a private sounding board at a high stakes inflection point, to maximize this AI wave as the playbook keeps changing, I work privately with clients like you, partnering in executive coaching so that you are leveraging your zone of genius and your optimal energy and clarity for your best outcomes. The next step is to reach out directly or book a call on my LinkedIn. And so let me quickly check if there's any questions or in the comments. I don't see any, but we welcome people to write comments and questions after the podcast, and we'll be happy to answer them. Also curious to hear what resonated or stood out to you as well, if anyone is willing to share with us. And so, Joe, thank you so much. This was fascinating, and I really, really appreciate your deep leadership wisdom. I think you shared so many truly non-obvious insights that I don't commonly find in a lot of leadership environments. And I think you shared so many gems that will spark people's mind and actually be highly valuable to the folks listening. Thanks for having so many positive messages and helpful reframings along the way. And so thank you everyone for joining us today or on the replay. Wishing you your best energy and highest leverage in your zone of genius.
Thanks so much, Christina. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks, Joe. It was super fun.